All right, we are live. Welcome to Religion Zero. I think it's number 9. I forgot what number I put on there. Are we on 8?
We're 8.
God's perfect
Man, it feels like 9. Time flies when you're having a deep religious discussion. So
that would be an ecumenical question.
Yeah, man, what's up with that? But yeah, this is Religion Zero number 8. We're gonna have a special guest eventually when he shows up. So that'll be cool. It'll be Rian Stone. Ryan Stone is known for things such as Superman 5: A New Hope and Canadian. And he's the number 1 person, trying to defund the Canadian police. So, yeah, he's really big on that.
Anyway. Isn't he that guy that was on Lois and Clark? Oh, no, that's Dean Cain. Sorry,
Ryan Stone, same thing.
He's trying to dismount the Mounties.
Yeah. Yeah. Free maple syrup, healthcare. That's what I need. Well, anyway, my name is Conk. Right now we're on my channel, but the channel rotates all the time. Yep, I'm a guy. I do things. Yeah, that's my description. I don't know if I need any more. Say no more. All right, Brooke, would you like to introduce yourself?
Brilliant, Corey. Brilliant. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Brooke Potter. I am originally from the Twin Island nation of Trinidad and Tobago. Looking forward to the conversation with Ryan today. He's a guy, I've been following for a while. A great guy with a great sense of humor and stuff like that. So I'm really interested in his input. And we were kind of discussing before, and Corey, I'm going to throw it back to you in a bit. Like, what exactly is the whole Sealing Gang? Does that set the pace for the conversation? So yeah. just very briefly, when I looked it up, I'm sure my dear co-host did the same on Urban Dictionary. It's like, these could be like the enemies, like the worst of the worst people. And I'm kind of like, this is your opponent. So I wondered if you were asking if God is our opponent for the conversation. So
yeah, I mean, so Floor Gang is Floor Gang. It is what it is, right?
It just is.
And it usually involves tambourines and a lot of ooze,
Is there kumbaya? I do enjoy a good kumbaya.
Yeah, only in secret, though. You got to act tough in person. But Floor Gang is a PewDiePie meme in that that's his essentially group or tribe, and everyone else that's not Floor Gang is Sealing Gang. There is no other gangs. And so I was trying to decide philosophically, is God Sealing Gang? Or is God in all gangs because he's omniscient, right? Or omnipresent, right? One of those omnis. Yeah, he's in one of those. Because is he the Father above, or is he everywhere at all times? So which gang is he really in? That's the real deep dive issue here.
He is also Wall Gang.
Ooh, delicious.
Foundation Gang too. This could get complicated.
Yeah,
Wolf Gang.
Oh,
yeah,
we lost
Conk. Conk kind of triggered my tent revival neuro association.
Oh man!
When he said that the channels rotate all the time, you may want to say the channels rotate all the time, and then you guys say the channels rotate.
Oh man!
Anyway,
I thought you'd say, and also with you.
Well, that would have been 6 or 7 years ago. Today it'd be in With Your Spirit, and I'd have to go like this.
Oh, good. We're
getting a bit of an update
specific. There. We're getting
which, by the way, yeah, it's hard to watch Star Wars without always wanting to say, and also with you when they give you the Force.
The Force be with you, and also with you.
Yeah, so now I have to say With Your Spirit.
Imagine if it said that in the new Star Wars movies.
Well, I almost genuflected in the aisle, in the movie theater aisle, before I sat in my seat.
Just miraculously what is it? The kneeling thing, whatever that is. The thing you kick out. Yeah, kneel. You kick one out in the theater and just kneel.
Okay, now when it comes to kneelers, I gotta admit, man.
Oh, there he is.
Oh yeah. Is Ryan alive?
What's going on, Ryan?
There we go.
You've been thrown in to the wolves. or
Welcome to the
lambs,
party.
depending on your religious interpretation.
Whoa.
Oh boy, you're gonna love that. I just had to last minute focusing stuff here.
Actually, I kind of like it. You might want
to stick with that.
We call it the deep stash cam.
Enjoy it.
This is deep stash.
3 more hours. That's it.
We're doing our
Roach
best here,
experiment is a
Ryan.
failure, which I guess is on topic here.
Hey, man.
We're doing our best here, Ryan, because PewDiePie is streaming right now. So
Yeah,
we call it the Sunday Night Wars, and we're WCW.
yeah.
The trick is you got to pick a smaller target. Go after like a group that does conventions in Central Florida. You can take them on.
Oh yeah. I think we beat him in our debut. Well, anyway, we were going through introductions, and we only got through 2, and then it just immediately went to hell. But AMOS, would you like to introduce yourself and what's going on with you?
Literally nothing going on. So contrary to popular belief, I am not some crazy lefty now just because I was in a picture at a protest. But no, my name is Amos Joseph Brook, and I do the 10K Run podcast. And yeah, I don't know what else. There's not much else. Minnesota's not on fire anymore. Minnesota's not on fire anymore. So it is a beautiful day out there. There's no ashes, there's no soldiers in the streets or anything. I think we're good.
Oh, nice.
So,
No National Guard. Is the National Guard still out in Minneapolis?
they're probably out somewhere doing something. Supposedly
National
theories.
Guarding.
Yeah, National Guarding out there with supposedly fake guns or something. There's all sorts of theories about them, but
with fake guns. It says Nerf for nothing on the side. What the heck,
Inflated
man?
oh,
tanks.
there were pictures of them on the streets, like fires going on behind them, and they're holding these guns with no magazines in them, and they're like, just people are like, hey, they're just walking around, just unloaded guns, like they're not doing anything.
They're not fake guns, guys. They're ceremonial guns. Show some respect.
I was gonna say your National Guard. Like, what is the National Guard? Is that like a state version of the military?
It's a yeah. So it's this. Yeah, each state has their own National Guard, but there's cases where the president can federalize them, so the National Guard can serve an active duty, like in the Middle East and such. Yeah, they can do that, but then there's also this weird clause where actually the governor can say no to that. So there's cases where, it's kind of
happening in DC at the moment.
No, it makes sense then. And is it full-time soldiering or is this part-time weekend warrior stuff?
It's kind of weekend warrior stuff. Most National Guardsmen that I know are like just doing like their drills like every weekend, every other weekend. Very few are actually active duty.
This is just like our reservists, which is hilarious when you see them talk about them as professional soldiers. I'm like, dude, these are college kids. Get out of here.
Yeah, it's a very small handful of them that actually see any real action. Besides, it's just in case shit hits the fan.
Yeah, I signed up for the free camo jacket, so those getting expensive these days. All right, Bobby, what's going on with you? Who are you?
Oh man, living the dream here in Thailand. Watching America burn from 8,000 miles away, and kind of wonder if I should come back, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you consider staying in Thailand?
No, I got too much work to do back in the U.S., but it just sounded good to say that.
Good man.
Dude, you're the king of social distancing. If you're 8,000 miles away, you should get some kind of like quarantine medal of honor.
As long as you don't call me the king of social justicing, we're good.
Yeah.
Good man.
Jeez, these days. All right, Ryan, who are you? Who are you, Ryan?
Oh, geez. I guess for the perspective of this thing, I should be a 3rd generation Baptist minister and farmer, but I rebelled against the family and went to college. But no, I'm a small town ranch boy. Yeah, just a small ranch, a couple thousand acres, a couple hundred head, and went to college to be a graphic designer, then wasn't happy with that, joined the military, kind of aimless, and since then started doing corporate stuff, and now I tell men how to have sex with their wives full time. Just finished my first book, so I'm technically an author now, whatever that means.
Wait, have sex 40 hours a week?
If you want.
If time allows.
Some marathon training going on in there.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life.
No, it's just the way you worded it. Have sex full time. I'm thinking, wow, that's a lot of
Is there any insurance benefits? Come on, I need to know. Is this universal or what? But yeah.
Yeah.
So Ryan, we wanted to ask. Oh, go ahead.
No, I keep cutting you off. Go.
The missionary to those who
no, no. The route on Yuan is we kind of want to talk about before we all talked about our Batman origin stories of how we got into ministry and like where we are now. So yours is kind of like the reverse version, right?
Oh,
so
dude,
how did you start there and leave? Huh?
I don't even know why you brought me here. My dog is named Christopher Hitchens. I'll just let you know where it's at.
Dude, I definitely prefer Hitchens over Dawkins. Dawkins just kind of seems like a dweeb.
Yeah, he's not charming.
I'd agree.
I guess so. What's the thing here? It's about like the religion and relationships, or like what's the?
Well, it's mainly religion and the red pill that we touched on, but then Corey was wanting, Conk was having different people on to talk about like whether it's like we had Rollo on to talk about some stuff.
Okay, good. So he's covered his already. One thing I've found is there's this divorce lawyer, Red Curious. He's a pretty good guy. And he started up Red Christians because they're like, I like the red pill, but there are too many heathens. Let's get out of here and go with the chosen people. I'm like, all right, fine. And I'm finding that a majority of those guys, and this is going to sound very bad, but I noticed they don't actually try to be doing anything red pilled at all. They're trying to square the circle. Like they're spending a huge amount of time trying to find examples in the Bible that they could point to saying they're red pills, like almost like they need permission to do what they need to do to succeed in their life. It's a really fascinating thing to watch. And I find the successful guys are the ones that kind of, I mean, people already pick and choose what they want out of the Bible anyway. Like work on Saturday, like don't tell me, oh, the Old Testament doesn't count. I'm like, all right, that's why they left it in. But they're realizing like, if we're going to pick and choose anyway, I might as well at least pick and choose the stuff that helps me. So that's the two kind of things I've noticed as far as Christianity and red pill that come together. As far as why, I mean, asking a guy to give up his God is kind of a big deal. The only time I've ever seen people give up religion is when they want to marry a girl who's from a different faith, which, I mean, how faithful is it if you leave for a little bit of poon, right?
Happens more than you know.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
And sometimes they get browbeat back, into submission.
Yeah. Oh, don't get me wrong. Like my grandfather, he wasn't just a Southern Baptist minister. Like his mother had come to Canada from the Underground Railroad, so they got that kind of American vibe to it. But so he was the minister that trained other ministers. I guess he'd be like a cardinal if it was Catholic, but we're not Catholic. So like I know all this stuff. I've been to Sunday school. I have like 20 aunts and uncles. They were all raised as good Christian girls, and I've seen exactly how much of a train wreck that is. So it's like I'm not coming because I know a lot of guys, when you get like the anti-theist thing, you kind of think of it as, oh, they're just some smug liberal or something. Like, no, that's not it, man. It's not this one. So, but if I step on toes or cross like a blasphemy line here you guys aren't comfortable with, just let me know, because I mean, I'm at your house. The least I can do is be polite.
No, we're very laid back on it. I was about to say, so Ryan, do you know where you're going if you die today?
Would you repeat this one paragraph prayer with me?
And so said Stone Cold 316.
There we go. I mean, Ryan. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Bobby.
Well, no, I was just going to say, if Ryan grew up Baptist, that's the wrong question. You'd have to ask him, why should he be let into heaven?
Ooh.
It's good he brought up Stone Cold Steve Austin, since we were talking about The Rock before he showed up.
What's The Rock up to now? Did he kneel for the cops or kneel against the cops or whatever it is?
Oh, no, it was just, we were saying some, I don't know if we probably can't say
I don't think it's a good idea to just do that on.
Oh, hard R's? I get it.
You gotta hang out.
No, definitely not that either. It's just...
Dude, Ryan,
but Ryan, I wanted to ask you about, okay, so you've come from this heritage of faith, and for a lot of guys, there's like an aha moment where they go through some kind of transformation. Either they lose their faith or there's a change in their perspective. Was that your story? Were you like a believer as a young man, and then there was something that changed for you?
No, it felt like the family was phoning it in, so it never really took, I guess, in the best way. Like, here, I'll give you an example. The day I told my mom I'm atheist, she got mad at me. well, if you're not going to be anything, you might as well just be Baptist. And that was the end of the conversation.
See,
But
I mean,
there was no,
checks
like,
out. Yeah.
yeah, there was no guilt or fire or brimstone. It was just kind of like, I don't know how faithful they were. Like my grandfather was very faithful. He spoke slow. Everybody listened to every word he had to say. They kind of gave him that patriarchal reverence that everybody here, well, not here, but everybody in Twitter nowadays seems to want. But yeah, it's really hard to see Christian people telling me to be Christ-like. Meanwhile, like my uncle Odie would come by the family get together every year. He'd have a different wife and a new leased car under his belt, or, you know, somebody's telling the story about how his son put him into jail because he got into a fist fight. And I was like, oh, or like how many guys are cheating on their wives. And my whole family, my mom's side, the Baptists, they're all black, and they would all bring like white husbands and white wives in like it was like a trophy, and they were bragging, who's got the best white one? All right, I got one. And the whole thing, I was just like, I guess I was young enough where I just looked at it directly going, what the hell? Grandpa says one thing and these guys do other things. And then Sunday school was a pain in the ass. I didn't really like it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wish I could tell you there was some like epiphany or anything, but no, it's just kind of,
It never took.
no,
Yeah.
it's like Transformers. I watched some of the movies, but
It's like seeing how the sausage is made. You don't really want to have that often. You know?
That's why I wonder. Honestly, I wonder how guys. Like, I'm assuming you guys are all men of the cloth, or what's the salt of the earth, whatever.
I'm more paprika of the egg, but yeah, I get what you mean.
Excellent. Yeah, like
I've got lots of rum. That's about all I can say.
Like, clearly, there was something that you got that I didn't that made you all faithful. I just don't know what it is. Like, did your mom hug you more or hug you less? Did you have to read was your first book you read not highlights for children? Was it the Bible? Like, I don't even know.
Well, we're all kind of in different camps too. We're not all like extremely faithful. We're not all like fundamental to the letter kind of Christians. We're all kind of different levels. We all kind of have the red pill in common. So then everything else is just kind of in between. You know, whether it's some of us who might believe one thing about one thing or anything else about another. Like, even like, what is it like? We all have different views on like, okay, is premarital sex a sin or not?
Oh. So
Yeah,
what is it? What's the board say? 2-2, yes versus no?
I think it's like 3 versus 1, isn't it?
Yeah, probably 3 out of 4.
Oh, no.
I'm going to vote Conk is the one.
No,
man.
He's got a big smile on his face. I'm just saying it could be.
no.
Yeah. Well, it was funny you were bringing up the Christian Red Pill Reddit, and like when I first started doing all this and started listening to you guys, you know, a couple years ago, I was on there and I was reading it, and I realized one of their rules is you can't talk about premarital sex on their subreddit. And I'm like, they're not even open for discussion. They're just automatically assuming it's wrong. And I'm like, you guys are cutting yourselves off like so fast. So I was on that about a month and I quit. So
yeah, and it's the weirdest thing because like the Christian girls were probably the easiest ones to put out from what I remember. Remember when Catholic girls would be a thing? And they were like, oh yeah, you got to get yourself a Catholic girl. She'll do anal. That was like what they just joked about.
God's loophole. Yeah.
There's and now I'm noticing like Muslim girls tend to be that thing now. Sorry, I lost the lights here.
Yeah, it looks like you swiped to dark mode on your app, but
I gotta replace this stupid light. All right, you know what? Screw it. Let's just go natural.
Well, no, it kind of reminds me. It's
but
funny
yeah, like chicks are already doing it. They're premarital like hell. They just justify it later, or they only go for blows or anal. And I just find it weird how a guy can seriously call himself red pill when he decided that he's going to hobble himself on purpose. You know what I mean? Like it didn't really change anything at all. So like, why? Why do you want the brand? Because it's not an attractive brand. Red pill is the least attractive thing you could call yourself. If I go out in public and say I'm red pill, people either not know what I'm talking about or they'll laugh at me. So I just don't get it. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe you guys get it.
Oh, I get nothing. I'm pretty proud of that.
I mean, I think
that's
here,
what, guys. I'm here for eye candy. You know,
that's very much why Conk put this whole thing together. There are these kind of disconnects, and of course, everybody's coming from a different stream. Mm-hmm. And yeah, some are more liberal, some are more flexible. You know, some have different interpretations. And we thought that would be an interesting conversation. We should have these discussions and figure out, like, stop hiding from the really difficult topics. Let's be real. Let's talk about this stuff, faith, men, all this type of thing. And you're absolutely right. Most people don't want to have these conversations in the modern reality. That's why that's why we're here.
Like, the actions matter. Like, we can talk till we're blue in the face. I mean, we can because we're infotainment here. But like the average person, they love to talk and communicate. But like, girls don't seem to care. Like, in general, girls don't seem to care. It's strictly ego based, like will to power. Now they got where, like, what was the Catholics? They were like no female priests, and now they're finally letting female priests in, and they probably grabbed the most LGBT friendly. So it was just like not even putting up a struggle. So how faithful is it when?
Well, they technically haven't ordained. Like, the church will never ordain female priests, but there are lots of feminists who kind of think they are they kind of barge their way into it, and they're shooting blanks. Like, they're not really confecting any sacraments or anything, even though they put on the garbs and they ordain each other. It's not it's kind of like, it's almost like,
it's like off-brand Chinese knockoff Catholic.
Well, I mean, if
welcome
we're
to
calling
Target
it
Church.
if we're calling it what it really is, it's spiritual lesbianism is what it is. Like, the idea of a woman priest, because, and from the Catholic perspective, which, we believe that Christ is the bridegroom, right? And the church is the bride. And that's why the church is always referred to in the feminine as she, bride, like if you look in Ephesians 5.
Yeah, so it's like naming your boat.
Well, yeah. Well, because, it's deeper than that, because the masculine gives, the feminine receives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even the human anatomy is designed that way. Like, the male anatomy is designed to give, to literally push in. The female anatomy is designed to receive, right?
Yeah,
to be
innies and outies.
Yeah, there you go. Male and female, he made them, right? So it's kind of like if Christ is the bridegroom and priests are joined to him when they were ordained, if a woman became a priest, it would be bride and bride. It would kind of be like Mel Gibson calling up Julia Roberts to play the part of Jesus in The Passion of the Christ.
Gotcha.
So that's that. So the church doesn't have the power to ordain women. It'll never happen. But like I said, the church has been overrun by feminism. So any quote unquote women priests you see, they're not really ordained. Even in the Anglican church, like that happens more so like with Episcopalians.
Yeah, well, I know, the Canadian Anglican Church is actually removed from the Anglican network, just because gay marriage,
right?
Which is, I find it funny because the Anglican is a British thing, right? That was like the King George separation, so they decided to make essentially a state religion, and then King Henry, thank you. So Canada's Anglican Church is an offshoot of that, so it's technically a state-run religion. So by following state law, they're now removed from the religion. It just seems like there's no consistency to it. Either it's the state religion and follow state law, or it doesn't. Now I know you can do passages, the God is your God, but you follow the law. I really butcher the things because I haven't read in like 20 years, but you guys know what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Follow the laws of the land, sort of thing.
Render to Caesar what is Caesar, and to God what is God's.
I know, and the whole thing, like all these, like when I see tradcons arguing about the way things should be and what people should do, I'm like, first off, that argument was 30 years too old. Like, it's too late. The war's over. You lost.
Yes.
And then the new trend now is to try and get young men, like guys who are 20, 22, haven't had sex, and they're like, you guys need to fix this. Like, why? Why would I want to fix this? First off, you got to think people respond to incentives. Well, the best they can do is promise a guy, well, you get yourself a 20-year-old trad wife. It's like, the problem is there is none of those. By the time the guys would fix this, it's going to be too far gone for them. So you're not actually asking a guy to fix something for himself or fix your problem because he can do it. You're asking him to fix things for your children. And I think this is something to take away. I don't know if anybody here has like a ministry and they're doing that whole trad save the West thing, but realize you're asking a guy to sacrifice himself for you, and it comes across as very tone deaf and selfish. Like, let's face it, the boomers and to a lesser extent the Gen Xers kind of created this mess. Asking millennials and Zoomers to fix it, it's probably not going to happen, and that's most likely why viewership or pewership is down.
Pewership.
I'm trying to remember with the wordplay here. And then, of course, the church is missing people, and this is what I don't know if you guys have read Ian Ironwood's book Manosphere. It's kind of a history.
No, I don't think I've heard of it.
I've read it.
It's a history of everything. It goes all the way from like 1970s Playboy stuff to like the 2000s purarchy, MGTOW, red pill, Christian stuff like the Dalrock thing. And yeah, and he was talking about this. So when guys left the church, like, we need people, we need donations. Who are the ones that are most in need of salvation? Like single moms and slutty women who want redemption. So they kind of bring those in. And then there's the incentive to cater to them because they're the ones that bring men in and they're the ones that are filling the seats. And that kind of led to the feminization of the church, which is an interesting thing when you look into it.
For
but
sure.
what was the
Completely
original
agree.
thing we were talking about? Because I totally trailed.
Well, no, I was
Hey,
gonna ask
that's
you,
what we're here for.
Isn't it true, Ryan? I read this a few years ago. You may or may not know this, but couldn't priests go to jail up in Canada for reading Romans chapter 1 when it condemns homosexuality? I read that Canada basically.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yes and no.
That's interesting.
So what they're talking about is a human rights council violation. We have this weird extrajudicial agency. That's where, like, the Jordan Peterson Senate hearing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was all that was about. So the Human Rights Tribunal isn't a criminal tribunal. It's more like the same way you would sanction Iran, because you can't arrest Persians for, oil embargoes or whatever. So it's got that same vibe to it. Now, the problem is, and this is where the jail part comes in, if you start doing the anti-homosexual thing, you'll go against the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, where it says you shall not. Ours is like we have free speech, but it's conditional on not stepping and infringing on the rights of people by age, sex, race, political. You know the spiel on that one. So if the Human Rights Organization decides to put a sanction on you, then it would cause, usually it's a fine or something. And if you don't pay that fine, or you don't adhere to whatever their sanction says you have to do, then that's a jailable offense. So that's that weird loophole that a non-criminal court can bring criminal charges, which is kind of scary. But at the same time, the law can say what the law says. It's enforcement that matters. And you're not going to see that enforced locally, because most of the places that have heavy Christian or Catholic communities tend to lean heavily CPC or conservative. So it would be political suicide to bring that case up. So what you really end up having to do is you have advocacy groups. Like you guys had Bake the Cake guys, where they basically hounded this guy to make like an example out of him. But the narrative played it off as if like he was screaming like it was a 1960s made-for-TV drama. So that's what you end up happening, is that you got like LGBT advocacy groups and Christian advocacy groups using this as sort of like weaponized fodder for the hearts and minds of people and collecting scalps from it. It's a very weird scenario.
Modern church is pretty dang good at that. Let's weaponize it all.
Yeah.
You will be moral or else.
Yeah. But the States, you guys seem more extreme on this stuff anyway, aren't you?
Certain pockets can be, the left coast, New York, but then you have the Bible Belt, you have flyover country, the Rust Belt, they're pretty pro-church. But kind of going back to the theme of the show, I was also thinking, when you use that phrase "man of the cloth," Ryan, it reminded me, when I was younger, I actually did discern the priesthood. Like, I thought really hard about becoming a Catholic priest. I thought about it for years. And I actually spent a weekend at the seminary where priestly formation takes place. And they have this formation, they call it the 4 pillars of formation that every man has to go through.
Dude, that sounds like a Manosphere Guru brand.
Yeah, the 4 pillars of Catholic masculinity by Bobby Leon.
Yeah.
You could do a talk at a convention, man.
I could, man. And basically what the 4 pillars are, and I think this might kind of answer your question earlier about, Christian girls who don't live up to, or guys too, who seem to live that contradictory kind of life, is because, the first pillar is obviously you're studying to be a priest. So the first pillar is academic formation. And then, the first pillar is spiritual formation, where you develop your prayer life, develop your relationship with God. Second pillar is academic, hitting the books, upping your IQ, making sure you're smart, can give homilies and do research and interpret scripture and all that stuff. The third pillar is called pastoral, which makes sure you can heal the broken wounds of people and, just not be a jerk in the confessional to people and send them out crying.
Right.
But then the fourth pillar, But I think the fourth pillar is the reason why we see that disconnect, and that's called human formation. So you could have all the theological knowledge, you could have all the academic knowledge, all the pastoral, like you could know it all, but if you're lacking in that human formation, everything else just falls apart.
In other words, you're acting Christ-like.
Exactly. Well, and who is Christ? He was God and man, right? So you're developing your humanity, which means your maturity, your psychological maturity, your like all the areas of maturity that you need to have to be a fully formed human. If you don't work on developing those, the spiritual stuff is going to be undone by that. Like,
so would it be fair then to say that's an ethical and moral consistency between actions and thought?
Absolutely.
I hope you don't mind. I got to convert a lot of this stuff to like.
Yeah. Bring it down.
You're gonna like it, Ryan.
Secularized language.
Yeah, you got to bring it down from the clouds, and so yeah, it's about being a doer of the law and a hearer of the law, like at the same time. But I think that extrapolates into child raising too, because there's lots of similarities between the sacrament of holy orders and the sacrament of marriage. Like you have a lot of parents who raise their kids Christian, but they don't raise them by example. They take the do as I say, not as I do approach.
Yeah, which is weird because kids learn the exact opposite way.
Exactly.
Actually, there's a great post on this from a guy called The Last Psychologist or The Last Psychiatrist, where he talks about how failed parenting strategies have added to that level of society-wide narcissism we have now. Mm-hmm. And he used an example of picture a parent saying, don't watch TV, kid. It's going to rot your brain. Never watch TV. And so the kid learns the rule, don't watch TV. But then the dad's busy and he's like, I got to get this stuff done. Just go sit in front of the TV. And then the lesson the kid learns is sometimes TV is good and sometimes TV is bad. The lessons he learns are the guy who has the most power makes the rules. And so that kind of feeds into I got to be the most powerful person in the room, which is how it manifests now. Like I'm sure you've seen internet bravado or people just constantly talking about themselves. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing comes from just like crappy parents being inconsistent and not acting pillar 4.
Yeah, exactly.
Pillar 4.
And in a way, and it sounds extreme, but it's almost a form of child abuse. Because like usually when you think of child abuse, you think you smack your kid upside the head, you tie him up in the cellar by his thumbs and hang him.
Yeah, my 8th birthday.
Yeah, but neglect could also be a form of, like, if you coddle your kids too much.
Oh yeah, it is.
That's a form of abuse too.
But it's weird. It's like a more feminine form of abuse. Like smacking your kid around, that would generally be smothering. Like, moms do it too, but that's generally seen as a male thing, the violence thing. It's cute, it's quick, it's got, like, people have horrible memories of a goldfish. So something happens, 15 seconds later they forget. But hitting, you can remember that and you can draw attention to it, and there's physical marks. But you're right, psychological damage, there's never a single cause you could point to it, which is the hard part, because then you can't say, well, did mom screw this kid up, or was it the girls he was hitting on in high school? I mean, you make a case that 80% of it was mom screwing him up, or 80% of it was dad screwing the girl up, but there's just the way our legal system is set up for this stuff right now, it's just not capable of recognizing these things and assigning consequences to them, which is really all that matters. Don't do that, Chomsky. Consequences. And that's what I was getting to when you were talking about the anything but Catholic and Christian girls. You can say, yeah, we need to be more Christ-like, have a code of ethics, have morality based on the Bible and stick to it, but girls don't. So what do you do to that? Like, how do you enforce that? Is there an enforcement to it? It sounds like they found a loophole with the, and I know it's supposed to forgiveness is in the heart, but they just go ask for forgiveness and guys will simp for the girls. Oh, it's okay. It's fine. It's his fault. Like, you know what I mean? The average Christian person would rather call the dude a rapist than admit the girl was just hoeing it up.
Pretty much. I mean,
I don't know how to fix that.
I mean, one of the early episodes that we did was on relationships, and we talked about this very thing, that, you know, the biblical, the ideal would be great if everybody's a virgin, they marry and, you know, they have kids and do all that. But that's not the world that we live in. You know, from the sexual revolution, the birth control, feminism, all these things, a lot of those narratives just don't exist, as you've rightly pointed out. Yeah. So a lot of the guys, and I mean, we could speak to even, you know, some probably the, you know, people that are watching it as well. they felt like they've done the duty and they've done the Christian thing, and they're, you know, maybe abstaining, and they're trying to set a good example, while quite rightly you're saying the girls are doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that causes resentment and bitterness and its own type of red pill rage, if you will. You know, when your Christian morality and ideals are clashing up with the reality of real life. And that's what we're
nobody likes
discussing.
somebody cheating.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even in my case, like one of my early relationships was with a virginal Christian girl in a church. I wasn't the virgin, and I was beat to shit, like emotionally, all the time, because, you know, she'd supposedly been waiting and, you know, for all of this kind of stuff, and I wasn't. And I became like, you know, I was the big bad in that whole scenario.
Out of curiosity, can I ask, like, how long was it from like meet to an F close?
In that relationship?
In that one, yeah.
No, I had 2 virginal relationships at that time, and I didn't have sex with either of them. But I was very young at the time, naive. That was before red pill and all these other types of things.
Oh,
But
so you didn't do them. It's just the fact that you were even in the ballpark pissed people off.
Yes, yeah. I had done stuff before, so again, that's the Christian like hypocrisy in a sense. You can do whatever you want once you're outside the church. They bring you into the church saying, you know, God loves you. Yeah, no, it's you could do whatever you want. Once you're outside the church, there's grace. You know, you're forgiven. God loves you. Then the minute you become part of the church, it's no longer grace and God loves you. It's you got to follow all these rules, and that's the disconnect. So before the church, yeah, I was living it up. I was doing the party boy life. I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago, where I was a minority, so I was like exotic out there and living my best life.
Mm-hmm.
Became the Christian in my early teens. And I tried to do all that good behavior stuff. And literally, they were virgins. I had 2 virginal girlfriends. They were virgins when I met them, virgins when I left. And by the time the second one broke up, it's like, I'm done with this shit. And I went and slept with some married woman. It was just like, you know, fuck this shit. But this is the reality. Yeah, this is the reality some men are now coming to the reality of, is that, look, the facade of the holiness and these other things, it's not all it's cracked up to be. There's a lot underneath the surface, and the church doesn't want to talk about it. Men don't want to talk about it. They don't want to admit to it. And that's kind of where these discussions are going.
Yeah, it's that lack of self-interest. It's sacrificial. Like, at least Jesus took your guys' sins from you, so his sacrifice makes sense.
Sure.
But these guys just like hiding from the fact that the rules don't apply to anybody else anymore, and they're just asked to sacrifice. My military, same way. When I first joined, the motto was, like, the underground motto was work hard, play hard. And I can give tons of examples of that, but this is a good Christian channel, so we'll leave that alone.
We're not that good a Christian channel.
But then, like, and that was like kind of when feminism started to have its thing. So quality of life became a thing, and there's some good parts to it, but the bad parts of it was very easy. As soon as, like, you guys can get on the news and it's, oh, this douchebag did something. If a military member gets on the news, they're like, oh, the military did this thing.
Yes.
So they were very camera shy. And they're like, look, I don't care what you do, but if I ever see you on the news, your career is over. And so the work hard, play hard atmosphere of, you know, we got your back. If you have to do time, you're doing time, but we got your back. And so guys had a certain confidence to them, like, I'll stay out of trouble. But if I do go into trouble, like, at least it's fair. Like, I knew it was coming. I had it coming. But then it switched over to work hard and then don't play hard because we don't want to get you on the news. And they just kept asking military guys to keep sacrificing for without anything like that.
No reward.
Yeah.
No
and that
payoff.
And I know it sounds stupid, but just having a beer machine on the ship is that small gesture that makes a huge difference.
For the morale. Yeah.
But yeah, but they got rid of it because one situation where 2 people were fooling around, one was married, they accused the other guy of, like, sexual assault, and everybody kind of knew it was BS. So then they just take away everything. And now we're in a point where, like, our military is just gutted. It's almost as bad as it was in the 90s. They can't keep people. It's brain drain. All the people who have something better to do are gone. All the people who have nothing better to do have stayed around. So the few people that are left aren't the best and brightest.
Not motivated to stay.
Yeah, and it literally has an effect. And this is a metaphor for the whole Christian faith, if you're kind of catching on to this by now. So, like, the whole ability for the military to project force is actually impeded because of this, like what Rollo would call the feminine imperative. And I would say Christianity is the same thing. The less that guys are willing to either abandon non-working mental models and adopt good ones, and that's the game theory approach, or just start enforcing the rules as they are now, which most guys won't do because, you know, simping is killing. that you end up in the same situation. I would argue the guys who would probably be the best Christians right now, like some of the best ones, because they got their head on straight. They're not, just blindly following. They're the kind of ones who would be critical. They would help fix a whole lot of theological problems that are happening right now. Those guys are just leaving.
Yeah.
They may still believe in God, but they're not coming to the church. And I don't know if that reflects your guys' experience. You actually go to church, so maybe you'll see if the pews.
Oh no, this is my church.
So
that's why it's Sunday morning.
I could,
oh yeah, I guess it would be.
real quick. Basically, I mean, for a lot of us here, I mean, we're basically like, I don't go to church. I know Brooke doesn't go to church. Conk doesn't go to church.
I visit, but yeah.
I mean, but like I haven't visited in years. But basically, like for us, it's like we were in ministry. We'll have ministry experience, but at least for three of us, I could say we don't go to church. We're not involved in any ministry. So really, this show isn't really like a ministry thing. It's a place we can have these discussions, because the red pill kind of became like came afterwards to like change a lot of our beliefs. But
I get you. Here I was expecting like 100 Huntley Street. Definitely not.
No. But because religion,
yeah.
Religion was such a big part of just our life that it's like it's still relevant. It's not like governing everything. Like I'm not just sitting here like, I'll pray, I'll do a prayer and then I'll read a page of the Rational Mail and go to sleep.
Wait, we're not supposed to do that?
Did you light the candle? You have to light the candle.
I do 2 devotionals a day.
You guys are making me. You guys are making me feel like The Rock at the 1996 Survivor Series. I feel like I'm like the sole survivor because I'm the only one still going to church.
Nice.
But it's like what's that?
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to ask you guys a question, but you go first.
No, but I was just saying, like for me, I basically, this is what I tell people when they ask me. It's like I'm a Christian around Christians, so they don't freak out, and then I'm an agnostic around everyone else, so they don't freak out.
So you're like
Apostle Paul of you.
What's that?
So you're like
very
Martin Luther. I'm not going into the building, but I got it.
Yeah. I'll have full-on theological discussions with people to help them understand like the stuff I went through and the things I understand. But then they're like, well, what do you believe? Don't really care to talk. Like, I don't really believe one way or another. I mean, I believe in, I'm kind of like the agnostic. There's a higher power, but there's a lot of like religious experience before that kind of holds on to that. So it's like I'm not letting it go completely, but I'm not holding on to it like it's every day.
Oh, fair enough. All right, so here's my question, and it's a theory I've got. I have no idea if it's true or not. I don't think the problem with modern Christians, like red-pilled modern Christians, is a Christian problem. Because a lot of guys, and they'll say the same thing, like my wife we haven't had sex in 6 months or 12 months or not since the 3rd kid. She's sexually repressed. She talks about a sexual assault she had 20 years ago every time I try to hit on her, and so I just stopped trying. All that stuff. And they always say like, well, like, look, if it's not working for you, you kind of have to leave. And we always do the reference Martin Luther's speech about, I don't know if you guys have heard, Catholics probably know this one because they hate it, where he was talking about if your wife doesn't do her duty, you bring it up. You tell her, hey, this is a marriage, have and hold, don't forget. She does it twice. You go up in front of the congregation, you're like, hey, this lady isn't putting out. And then the 3rd time, he's like, you know what, screw it, sex with the maid. I butchered the Martin Luther quote, but I got the broad strokes of it there. And so obviously there's theological basis for happy sexual lives, leaving somebody when they're not fulfilling their end of the bargain or being Christ-like within a marriage. But a lot of the guys use the Bible as their excuse, saying, well, I can't leave because my church, like the church says no. But it's not that objective. Like there's an ambiguity to it. So what I'm thinking is the church has nothing to do with the sad state of modern man. I think it's guys are using the church as a crutch. Same way as MGTOW kids or black pillars are saying, well, I don't have a jaw and I'm not 6 feet tall and I'm not looks maxed. That's my theory, which is a good thing though, because if that is the case, then that means that all the average Christian guy has to do is just nut up.
Go ahead, Bobby. Go ahead. Oh, it's Amos.
Actually, Bobby, if you want to go, because you haven't gone yet, so
this
go
is
ahead.
Gonna be good. You guys are like, I don't want to tell them.
Well, no, actually, and I don't think I'm the inventor of this term, but I've always kind of approached the red pill with the salad buffet mentality, right? And I don't think I invented that term. I think I've heard it used elsewhere, but I kind of look at it like this. It's like you got religion on one hand, dogma, religion, whatever you want to call it, spirituality. On the other hand, you have the red pill.
Right.
So for me as a Catholic, like, and I'm cool with the word religion because I don't think it's a bad word. I kind of look at it like this, like my 3 to 4 year observation of the manosphere, the red pill space, is that you basically have two types of guys. You have guys who take the kind of, and I would say they're the minority. They take the religious approach, they take the dogmatic approach to religion, and they take the salad buffet approach to the red pill, meaning they embrace all the dogma, they're unflinching on that, uncompromising on that. But when it comes to the red pill, they take the salad buffet approach. They take what works for them. They don't take what doesn't work, right? Like,
You
in
consider
other
that
words,
a good thing or a bad thing?
I guess neither, because the other side of that coin is you have other guys who aren't religious, and I think they tend to take the more dogmatic approach to the red pill. Because I believe that people are naturally religious. Like, we're religious animals. Like, I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy. It's a hilarious movie.
Both of them.
Classic.
Yeah, and what I like about that movie is it shows how just naturally religious of an animal that men are. Like, if we don't have a God that's like dogmatically revealed to us, like, we'll make one up, like whether it's preached to us or conjured up in our imagination.
Yeah.
We got all
have
them
the
golden calves.
Yeah, I see those same guys. You're right about those guys. I call them, they're there for the clubhouse. They're there for the camaraderie. They're not there to actually
Correct.
do anything. Which you're right. They are the vast majority because they're useless.
Yeah, so I kind of look at it like for me, like, I won't speak for the other panelists, but like, you know, I'm conservative, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm black, I'm male. Like those are, I guess, sub identities. But my primary identity is my Catholicism, and that regulates all my other identities. It kind of balances and reigns on all the other ones. So I kind of consider the red pill the same thing. It kind of, obviously there are parts of the red pill that are incompatible with like Catholicism, like, you know, sex outside of marriage, whether you're married, can't commit adultery, can't fornicate if you're not married. But for me, I feel like I've been able to reconcile a lot of the red pill, because at the end of the day, like Rollo says, it's a praxology. It's about human behavior. I consider it kind of like that fourth pillar. Like, it does help you develop as a human. Like, I feel like the red pill's made me a better Catholic. I really do.
Well, I hope so. But honestly, I think you're making it out to be bigger than it is. And this is why I hate the dogmatic clubhouse masculinity dudes. Because it's like, I use the Maslow's hierarchy example. It's strictly a level 3 thing. There's food, water, and shelter. There's a nest egg, and like not having to think, you know, more than a day in the future. You can plan for the future. Belongingness with your fellow man, and like sexual relationships, that follows under that. And then peer esteem, and then self-actualization. I would argue religion tends to be more, it's got some belongingness because you're part of a group, but they really do lean heavily on the peer esteem, on the esteem and the actualization. Where red pill, it's strictly belongingness. Guys are sexually frustrated, so learn it from each other. The other thing I disagree with, but I understand why it's there, where you say, you know, red pill says you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. Like, that doesn't exist. That's those stupid clubhouse guys, again, assuming that it's a different type of religion or a cult or whatever stupidity you want to put onto it. Like, there's no should to any of this.
Yeah. Don't should on yourself and don't should on others. All right.
Yeah. Well, it's closer to game theory, if anything. Like, look, if you're in a marriage, you talk about how marriages are sacrosanct, fidelity is key. Okay, so let's look at modern marriage. And then you look, okay, if a wife cheats on you, what happens? Well, nothing happens. Sometimes she even gets rewarded for it by a payout.
Correct.
That no-fault divorce thing. So is that really, as a society or as a civilization, have we decided that that is actually like a moral problem? Yes and no. No, in the sense that there's zero consequences for it, and in some cases even a reward. And let's use the church for an example. You guys, I'm assuming you're old enough to have seen some of your peers like divorced in the church, right?
Oh yeah. I've seen 5 of them in my own mom.
Yeah. So, whose side did the church take on it? Did they take anybody's? Did they take the wife's side?
Usually.
If there was cheating, if there was cheating, did they forgive her, take her back, and tell the guy he should have worked harder?
Half of that. I didn't see them say
I mean, from what I've seen, it's only it's either on the woman's side, like they're on her side, or it's neutral. It never crosses over to being on his side, really.
I'll add to that. It also can be very destructive to the man's side. So it's not just that they're on the woman's side. In the case of a gentleman that I know, when he was divorced and he was splitting up the assets, the pastor or the overseer told him to give her everything.
Jeez.
Like downright attacking, everything that he had built. So it's not just one or the other.
Yeah, and then that's the point. So there's no you should not worry about this stuff. It's just, look, you want to have this rule, sex, no cheating in a marriage, but everybody else isn't following the rule, and there's not only no consequences for it, but it's actually beneficial for others. So is this really a rule? And it's not. You should. Should has nothing to do with it. Nobody's doing it. You can do it if you want to, but just realize you're lighting yourself on fire to keep others warm. And then, we'll get into arguments over this where, but it's supposed to be like that. I get it. Shit in one hand and wish in the other. See what fills up first.
I kind of consider that one thing you'll notice about the church is that, ideally the church is supposed to lead and not follow, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, because it's composed of sinners in both the hierarchy all the way down to the laity, you see a lot of the things that affect society affect the church just as much. I'll use the Catholic Church as an example. There's just as many guys hooked on porn in the church as guys who don't go to church.
Same statistic,
yeah. The divorce rate is the same in the church as outside the church. In the Catholic Church, dogmatically speaking, contraception's not allowed. Just as many Catholics contracept as non-churchgoers. I would kind of see the feminization and everything you guys are talking about as far as marital infidelity. It's kind of in that same category. But to me, that doesn't delegitimize the church. Because even back,
it almost seems tangential to it. This is a problem whether you're in the church or not.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Even in the
society,
it's showing that the church doesn't hold the answer to it, which is the bigger problem.
Yeah.
And
I guess
I know Bobby will disagree with it, but the fruit of the ministry and the churches, and of course we're coming from different streams.
Yeah.
They have not been able to solve these issues, right? And I'm not saying any church. No, they can't. Well, I think they can't because they don't want to address the sexuality aspect. In fact, I did an entire video on this.
I was actually gonna touch on that, Brooke. If
then you take it, then I'll follow up.
But basically, in a lot of conversations that I've had with men around my age that are just the
How old are you, Amos?
27. So,
okay.
I think I told you there. So, a pastor that I know's son, who's around my age, I told him to read The Rational Male, and he read it and he really liked it and he understood it. And we had this whole conversation because we went to the same church before, a lot of the same beliefs, theology, and coming out of that and having this different understanding, we actually were able to relate because there's a lot of weird stuff about how that branch addresses sexuality. And it's because they'll paint this picture. So I'm going to use a way of explain this. You guys know the game Go Fish, right? With cards. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You guys know Texas Hold'em as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Poker, yeah.
So it's the church sort of paints this glorious picture of marriage and a relationship and being married, having kids, like this boring game of Go Fish. You're just playing. It's family friendly. Everything's going great. You're just having fun, right? There's no risk. It's just you fall in love. Everything's great, and then. Yeah. And then but then in reality, it's a game of poker, and we have this horrible. We play. We're playing way too aggressive before the flop. We're playing way too aggressive after the flop. We have no idea how to understand what cards we have, and then by the end of the hand, we've lost everything. It's just we're taught to kind of gamble because we're painted this picture that it really isn't. So we're playing all this. The game is presented one way, but the reality is something completely different. And it's
this model, man.
Well, yeah, it's this whole thing also with some people have asked us on the show here, well, what do you, is God a simp? Is God blue pill because he did this, this, and this? And it's well, you got to understand.
Hang out with prostitutes.
Yeah.
Right. But
and God is divorced.
Yeah. You got to understand though, the thing is what God did with people is completely different than what people do with people. So we're not the relationship we have with each other is going to be completely different than the relationship God has with us. We definitely aspire to that, but humans are still humans. They're saying, "Oh, God is doing this for the church, and He's totally simping for Israel and all this stuff." But then Israel still had plenty of problems. Israel, even though the God's chosen people, had plenty of issues. So how come we also
Jesus don't have Israeli Jew anyway?
Sorry,
technically. Technically, yeah.
Yeah,
but
of course it is.
But it's just this like, oh, because this is perfect, which is supposed to be. If God is supposed to be perfect, what we're supposed to emulate that. But then we we're supposed to be perfect in a relationship, but somehow we're not perfect when it comes to putting
you're
our hand
talking
in
like
the
the
cookie jar.
Catholic guilt cycle. Oh,
I mean, the guilt cycle applies to all the other branches too. There's a guilt
I
cycle
guess
along the evangelical.
Yeah.
But it's just it paints this rosy picture of how marriage is this sacrament, and yes, it is, and then it represents God's relationship with the church, which it also is. But then they say, and then all of a sudden there's issues, and then they don't understand it. They don't understand the sexuality. They don't understand the dynamics of just communication, of running your house.
They talk about the idea. They talk about the ideals, but talk is cheap.
Well, that's where that human formation comes in, which is lacking in the church.
I mean, that was the point that I was going to raise, Ryan, about I think the biggest issue in the church right now is actually an ancient heresy we called Gnosticism, where we believed everything spiritual was good and everything carnal was evil. So the church generally has overemphasized the spiritual. So we got religion comes in and turns sex, which used to be basically marriage was sex, it became a sacrament. And now it's a government contract. And all of these things have been added on to something that was really quite simple. And because the church doesn't like dealing with the natural, the humanity, the whole point of the incarnation of Christ was the stamp of approval upon your humanity. It's okay to be human. It's okay to drink and have pleasures and get angry and all these other things. But they've shied away from all of that, and you've created this dualistic tension within people where they're fighting themselves.
Christian
and as long as they're fighting themselves, they can't solve any of these other issues.
Yeah.
And that has been one of the biggest problems. If you can't address that, they're not going to build anything out of it.
But at the heart of the gospel is fighting ourselves, though, right? Denying ourselves.
No, I completely disagree.
But what about when Paul said that the flesh makes war against the spirit?
But see, here's the thing: the danger that presents is men feeling guilty for feeling horny and being attracted to women. They basically
and that's how you get loyalty, because you're getting. I'm the arbitrator of forgiveness, and I'll forgive you, so that you actually incentivizes for more of that unobtainable guilt, because you keep coming back to the trough to get more forgiveness. Give me more forgiveness. It's, again, great article on this one. That same guy I talked about before, Last Psychiatrist. It's Amy Schumer, gives you a look inside your soul. It's a story about how she got fingered by a cabbie on her way home. And she goes, I know it's a lot better than it sounds.
But it wasn't my first choice.
She was showing this whole story about it, and she was telling the story like, I'm a bad girl, I'm a bad girl, I'm a bad girl. I need forgiveness. Then they get forgiveness. That's the falling action in the narrative, and then everything go back as per normal. Oh, thank God. I was a bad person, but they forgave me. By the way,
that's pretty common in the church.
Christians do that too.
Yeah, it's very common.
And I can't really, guys would literally go and give their first field report. They'd have a victim puke. I've done this wrong. I've done this wrong. I'm not doing this. I'm not alpha. I don't lift, blah, blah, blah. Now sit there, guys, and please call me a bundle of sticks. I'm using the good language here. And I'm going we're not your priest. This isn't confessional. Nobody's here to absolve you of your sins. Just get to work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's self-inflicted. And self-inflicted, I think, applies to the church too. Why?
Correct.
So church can marry people. That's the thing. But they get a marriage certificate still from it, right? You get a government marriage certificate, whatever. So what's stopping the church if the divorce situation ruins families, incentivizes divorce, all those talking points? I'm sure we all know them. What's to stop the church from just having a private ceremony saying, when the church's eyes, you guys are married. And if you divorce and the church doesn't approve it, you're out. And then completely just ignoring the governmental side. As far as the government's concerned, you're just boyfriend, girlfriend, but that's a tax implication. That's not a spiritual one. Jesus wasn't handing out certificates of marriage. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Yeah. But they don't.
I think that's what, honestly, a lot of the Red Pill Christian stuff is one of the solutions is. And so Brooke just mentioned it briefly, but actually the church and the government doing marriages and marriage license is actually pretty recent in human history. Mm-hmm. We talked about this in one of the other broadcasts. In the Old Testament, marriage was just something you did. It had nothing to do with the church, and it had nothing to do with the state, right? There was no licenses. You just had your own personal peer-to-peer contract as husband and wife, and you did your own little party with your get-together and your friends.
And that's why the guests were there.
And that's what it was. Yeah. Yeah, that was it. There was no state. There was no church. Like, that's how it was,
capitalism.
In the oldest books of the Bible, right?
So yeah, and here's the thing. So if you really wanted to do, and I don't engage in the whole like Christian back and forth argument thing because it's like it's not my fight, but you could easily argue it's a very Christ-like thing to do, to marry your girl, go to church, and just essentially do what I'm doing, have a live-in girlfriend. But as far as the church is concerned, you're married, buy the ring, she loves the ring, whatever.
I agree.
That would be at least a step in the right direction, but no. Like you said, there's some Christian dudes who are kind of disenfranchised with the church anyway suggesting it, but none of what you would consider an authority is doing that. And I just don't get why guys would still go to church. It's very clear that it's not there for them. They're almost fodder to help them.
The other side of that is exactly what you're talking about, is the need for the peer group. And again, because of this kind of isolated society and stuff like that, people, and I've seen it. I've gone and I've preached at a conference and people come out like, wow, oh my God, you've changed my view of everything. They go back to their home church and the home church fixes them and undoes everything that I taught them. Because they want to belong. They want, the peer pressure of wanting to belong. As Amos was saying, the only reason I go to church these days, there's very little that people are adding to me. I go for the people. Like, I like to meet people. You know, I don't agree with half of what these people are believing, but I love people. You know, I love to hear their stories and all this kind of thing.
Heck, you might score.
Yeah, and I have, but
it's funny you bring up that. I actually had a pastor that I talked to once. I basically had a conversation with him before the service. I'm sitting there talking to him like, yeah, you know, it's really interesting. I watched this whole thing about how inerrancy of the Bible. So the Bible, whether it had errors or not. And I'm sitting here talking about him. I'm like, yeah, it's like there's, you know, it's just a book and it, you know, it wasn't really supposed to exist. It was some council that came up with it and all. And I'll talk to him about that. He goes, yeah, sure. Goes up there like literally 2 minutes into his like little introduction. And we're here at this church for Bible-believing Christians. And I thought, did he just
lip service?
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So the Bible isn't I mean, it's technically a bunch of blog posts from a bunch of different authors condensed into a single book.
Correct.
Yeah. And they all have very specific audiences they're addressing in the beginning, too.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the most important book in Christianity. I'm not going to deny that, but it wasn't meant to be.
You really want to be technical about it. It's the biggest
but it wasn't meant to exist in the way that it does right now, where it's like, at least based upon, if you look back far enough, like there wasn't a book for 300 years.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even refer to the Bible as a book because it's not. It's more of a library than it is a book. And like every library,
collection of books. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
you have
the School of Athens and Judgment Day are both in the Stanza del Signatura. It's essentially the same thing. There's no philosophy. There's 8 or 9 philosophers that wrote a book, and you go to a class and they give you a big stack from them. The Bible's the same thing. And you can always get into like, well, why did they add these books and left so many of the other ones out? I think Dead Sea Scrolls, if they finished translating those now, the ones they found like 20 years
ago. Yeah, but they didn't have any Jewish scholars to translate it, so people are questioning the integrity of the translators.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, well, I was saying the Bible.
You did not put a cover sheet on your TPS report. You did not.
Well, I mean, the Bible's a library more so because not just because it's a collection of books, but also because, you know, like every library has different literary genres, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have philosophy, you have history, you have self-help, which you can call it apocalyptic language, poetry, you know, so it truly is a library. And I think the other thing, and this would be like a whole nother show, is just the theology of sin, right? Like even in Jesus' day, even the pre-church, if we call it, read Matthew 23. He was chewing out the Pharisees. Those were the religious leaders of his
Those were
time.
the pastors, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They were. He was calling out their hypocrisy. And all pastor is the Latin word for shepherd, right? So he was calling out the shepherds of that time. And sin is always going to exist. Like it existed since Adam and Eve, and it's going to exist until Christ returns. So the fact that sin still exists, I mean, the church's job is to eradicate sin as much as possible. And that's where the sacraments and all those things come in. But at the end of the day, we still have free will. We still have what's called concupiscence. We're all still fallen. Our entire life is a process of purification, and it's a struggle every day. which to me
My
that's
secular ass is picturing it like guilt management.
well, yeah. I mean, to me, that's why I still go to church. To answer your guys' question, because I go to church for the same reason like people go to a hospital, and I know that sounds like so cliche, but it's true. Like I go,
man.
that's where I encounter Jesus. That's where I get healing. That's where I get medicine, strength, and that's why I go. I don't go because it's a rule. Like I have to go to church today. I go because I want to, and it just, yeah. I mean, it helps me get through life.
Yeah, and you can separate Red Pill from the church because they're completely. It's like the science church. Well, you can put them together? It's like no, they're completely different. It's like Predator can make a science fiction movie that's also like a horror flick. Movies can do that. Like thought praxeologies, ideologies, you can't really do that. They're meant to be different.
I don't know, Ryan. I think I need everything to conform to a very specific box I made up in my head, and it has to fit in that box.
Oh, dude,
Hey, I've got
modern society, and
I've got 50,000 boxes for you right here in America to look through.
Ooh, can't wait. Everyone loves a good schism.
Read my stuff. Dude, that's actually a good example. Like when you talk about sin is a container word, 100%. Like, yeah, there's things that are sins, but that's the problem is that everybody's are different. Well, the 10 Commandments are sacrosanct. But then you talk to other people. Well, that's Old Testament. The new one's not quite that way. Well, it's working on Saturday, and you kind of get into that whole Hebrew thing, where they have the laws and the rules they follow, but they're like, yeah, that's fine, but God let a bunch of loopholes in there, so that way you can, I'm not pushing buttons. The buttons are hitting themselves, and I just unpush them, which is cool.
Correct. I mean, I would have a different argument to what Bobby's saying, because I would come more from the Eastern Orthodox, and they actually do believe that the issue of sin has been dealt with. It is past tense. Mm-hmm. So if you look at sin, there was an entity, so there was a noun of sin. Yeah. And it talks about it, using men and using their guilt and trying to take advantage of them. So some kind of spiritual whatever. That has been completely eradicated. The cross, Jesus took sin into himself. He took away the sin of the world. Whatever that was is gone. Now we do still do behaviors. We do behaviors these are verbs that are considered sin. Right. But God has also dealt with that through the incarnation, and the whole point future. The whole point of it is, yes, you have sin, but your sins are completely forgiven.
Yeah.
So let me
ask for it or something like that, right?
No. Oh, you are, because again, this is the different streams. So the Eastern Orthodox Church, they still do confession, but it's the confession is for your benefit. But in terms of God's perspective, your sin issue is dealt with. Like, you have been reconciled, you have been made whole, you have been adopted, you have been forgiven. This is why good news, or the gospel, is past tense. It's news. News is something that's already happened, and I'm now telling it to you. Like, have you not heard the good news? So we're not fighting sin, right? The Eastern Orthodox Church is not fighting sin. We are fighting to have a more pure union with God. So which means you have to be the most pure expression of who he's made you to be. The whole point you're on the earth, one, is to figure out who he is, the kind of father he is, but also who he made you. And that means you got to live. You got to figure out whether you like skydiving or riding motorcycles, or if you drink absinthe, or snort coke, or that's an extreme example, but I'm just as an illustration, the emphasis in the Eastern Orthodox Church is about expressing life. Now, not all things are life expressing. Of course, if I go and kill somebody and I get locked up, it's not exactly a very good expression of life. But the emphasis is not in sin in that respect. The sin issue's been dealt with. Now it's about figuring out, trusting the Christ in you to find the honest expression, and that involves living. And
so
that's
basically, make sure you have your membership card, and don't be a bag of shit, and live a good life.
Do the work and figure out who you are.
Honestly, I would even put the live a good life and don't be a shitbag. I think that's covered too.
No, it's exactly. Even the mistakes, even the shit that we can do, even that has tremendous value in our lives. So even in the first chapter of John, God shines in the darkness. So we think in terms of light and dark, like the Roman Church would, again, is dualism, is the idea of, there's good and bad, or light and dark, and these things. No, it's all union. It's all come together. God shines in the darkness. So even in your worst anger, rage, wrath expression, God is still working in it.
And hookers.
A lot of that good and bad, though, is just how you frame it. Like, if you know the trolley thing, that's the same thing. I could either hit this button, and instead of the trolley running over 5 people, it runs over 1 person, in which case you'd say, I saved 4 lives, I'm a good person. You could be like, you know what? I didn't kill anybody. I'm not hitting a button because as soon as I hit that button, I will kill this one guy. Those 4 people were dying on something that I had no control over. And then so both people are good depending on your framework.
On your perspective.
Yes, I think this is part of why the godliness didn't make much sense to me, because it's just so subjective. Then if I can just do whatever anyway, why not just do it? Like, why do I need the middleman?
It's not, again, and this is where people conflict with.
Keep it aside. You're right. Getting aside the part that the spiritual part. I get that part.
Yeah. If we do have a spiritual check within us. So Paul would talk about like how he wanted to go and preach in Asia, for instance, and he says, well, the Lord hindered him. So the analogy I use is like, we have this massive open field. You can do whatever you want within that field. This is like the space that God has given you to operate, and he'll stop you when you've gone too far. But most Christians
are too far though.
That's between the person and God. We honestly don't have that clearly defined. Now there are some New Testament rules about no sacrificing to blood and understanding no sacrificing to idols and stuff like that.
Yeah,
coming out of the First Council of Jerusalem, but that's kind of all that's clearly defined. And throughout the church councils that have come together, they have tried to define more and more and more. But you're starting to see politics come into it. You're starting to see special interests come into it. So it really kind of comes back to a simpler message of what went off with the Ethiopian eunuch. All he had was the Old Testament. He was baptized by Stephen, and all he knew was Christ was in him, and he was good. Just like trust Christ in you, and that's the message that we put out. It's like Christ is in you. Lean on that. He'll tell you what's right. He'll tell you what's wrong. Foster that relationship.
And in the end, we're all back to simping. All this talk. Well, no, it's honestly it. Like, the woman of Wollendorf, that 20,000 BC. I don't know if you guys believe in that or not, but it's essentially like the oldest worshipped figure in human history that we have an example of. And I think we're kind of going back to that, worshiping the female form. Because that's the problem. You can have all these very logical and rational and philosophical and theological debates about what should, what shouldn't, what's in the field, what's outside of the field, blah, blah, blah. But there's this underlying mechanism of needing validation. And especially for guys who, like you said, they're in the church now, girls are sucking dicks and you're not doing anything. So you're getting resentful for it. But there's always that underlying need of validation from the female form. And that kind of bubbles up. And I think that's where it totally sours the entire process that we're discussing here.
Correct.
Because you can talk about what's inside and outside the field, but Stacy's like, yeah, that's not outside the field because I just did that. So it's got to be good. And you want to get with Stacy and be, have 8 kids and work the farm and till the fields. So you're like, we'll do some work. And then you take that great big brain rationality and you're like, well, if you add Matt 3 to John 7 and then throw a little bit of Mark in there, and then those old Dead Sea Scrolls is at this, it's perfect. You can actually have anal with a drug dealer on the first date, but we still get to stay married. It's pretty good. I know. I'm surprised I'm not catching fire right now. I'm not lying to you guys. You're good sports. I'll give you that. I'm trying. I know, probably my best. I know this is.
I actually completely agree that is the problem that we're in right now, because the Bible does not have, not even the church councils have anything to relate to modern sexuality and sexual dynamics. They're completely at a loss.
Is there a solution to that?
If you read,
the only thing I've seen that works.
I personally don't think there's a solution, because how you worded it says we're going back to that fertility god, but I don't think it ever left, is how I see it. Like, fair. I hear all the time, like, oh, this generation's the most sinful. Back in my day, we weren't as bad, blah, blah, blah. But every generation has said that since the creation of language. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those kids
they had Victorian absinthe houses where people were jerking each off other in the tables. Like, it's not new.
Yeah, with cocaine.
Well, with what you said, Brooke, about the church not having the answer to, what was that you said about modern answers to...
the current field of sexual dynamics and dating.
Yeah. If you read John Paul II, especially when he was Karo Wojtyła before he became elected Pope, he wrote this book called Love and Responsibility. That book it's turned atheists into Catholics after they read that book, because he goes into he's an incredible philosopher and theologian, but he goes into the practical side of sex. And he marries it very well with the Catholic sexual ethic. He even gets, I know Rollo talks about, not giving prescriptions. He got so detailed in this book that he actually encouraged husband and wives to try to be able to achieve orgasm simultaneously. He actually said that husbands and wives owe it to each other to make sure that they each orgasm
Lord.
during the act.
Oh yeah, use the rocking mechanism, and then when she's about going, that's when you go back to normal. No, it makes sense.
Well,
Actually, I
yeah,
wouldn't mind that. We should have that as like a mystery method 2.0 thing.
Yeah, if you read
Keeping a rhythm.
I mean, people have even dubbed it as the Catholic Kama Sutra. Like it gets that.
Hold on, Bobby. But in that respect, okay, is it a sex guide or is it dealing with the issue of feminism?
It's not a sex guide, and it touches on feminism. It deals mostly with the Catholic sexual ethic and how it's lived out in the modern world.
Okay, and in terms of in the modern world, what like how is that dealing? If
the backdrop of when it was written was in 1968, which was like the peak of the sexual revolution, and I think it was that the year the pill came out, or was it 63?
Around that time, yeah. It was before that, but sure.
But it was his answer to the sexual revolution.
Okay.
How did it work?
But I
out?
mean,
what was the end result of it? Is kind of the question.
Well, it's kind of like, well, it was. I mean, for people who live it out. I mean, there's a saying that people who don't. How does it go? Like you could see the wounds. Like people who don't live by church teaching when it regards human sexuality, you see the wounds of the people who don't. Like they're still wounded by it, whether or not they. Like if they don't live up to it, even if they don't believe in it or disagree with it, they still get wounded when they act against it.
Sure.
Kind of got a no true socialism vibe to it. Not gonna lie to you. What about the success stories though? Like people who did do it, you see, oh yeah, they're definitely on Catholic Kama Sutra.
No,
he's got a big smile.
I've got really good Catholic friends that have been married for decades. They have incredible sex lives because they do this thing called natural family planning, which is not the rhythm method, but like every appetite. No, it's not pulling out. Like every appetite that you feed, whether it's food or sex, the law of diminishing returns is going to kick in, and you're going to get used to it. It's going to get dull the more you indulge it, and it loses its luster. That's where the sex toys.
Don't even get me started on heroin. You know.
Well, yeah, but the thing is,
with taking it up a level from Coke.
With NFP. What Catholics do is they learn the woman's fertility cycle. They abstain on the day she's fertile. But what that does is it forces the couple to basically like love each other in non-genital ways, and it enriches the marriage, and it actually makes it keeps sex valuable to them because
so it's like blowjobs during Shark Week, but the opposite.
Well,
I'm blue collar, man. I have to word it this way.
I mean,
I'm not making fun of it. I'm really not.
Bobby, correct me if I'm wrong on this. This is all within the confines of marriage, is it not? The entire book is centered around that. Does it address dating at all?
There's parts of it that do, yes.
Anything but kind of stuff?
Yeah, and is it just courtship to marriage, or is it?
It's every phase, like courtship.
I'll check it out.
You should check it out. It's called Love and Responsibility. He even uses where I learned the word engorgement from Pope John Paul II. That's where I learned what that word means. Like engorgement, like when the male penis fills with blood.
We know what engorgement is.
Yeah. Just it's a $10 word, but he goes that deep into it.
Yeah, but that's the thing too. So I don't know if
it's 20 for that back in the day.
That's the thing. So you can't really argue for any, like, people are people. They don't generally, they aren't different, especially en masse. So you can't really argue that this is a failing of people on a fundamental level because people haven't changed. So largely the only real reasonable expectation is to say it's a technological one. And people say it's the pill, but I think the pill just accelerated it. Actually, quote whisper here.
It. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it just made it go faster. But honestly, it's the Industrial Revolution is my argument. Well, and a guy like Whisper's kind of what got me onto it. Back in the day, 97% of people were farmers. The job you could get literally from when you were 14 on. So it was very easy. And people sexually mature around, let's say 14. Let's be like, or what's law as a consent? Let's say 16. 16 is when people become sexually mature. So 16, you're sexually mature. And 17, you're strong enough to be able to work on the ranch full time or work on the farm. It's easy for a church to tell somebody, okay, keep it in your pants for a year, then you go get a wife, then you get married. Yeah. Now, if you're working on the farm, your friends come over, you guys build a house. By 18, you have a house, you got, trad wife, all that good stuff. Now you're in the Industrial Revolution. You kind of need a high school education in order to be productive, to work in a factory and learn how to work machines. So now you're telling that same 16-year-old, all right, you got to hold off now till you're 19.
Yeah.
And for the most part, people could do it. There was a lot more promiscuity, but it wasn't like floodgates weren't open. Hold it in your pants for 4 years now. A couple slip-ups. There's some forgiveness involved. You can eventually do it. A house costs 3 years' salary. Okay, it's doable. But now in the information age, okay, not only do you need to finish your high school, you need a 4-year degree, possibly a 2-year undergrad or graduate afterwards. So from 16 until 28, you need to keep it in your pants, which is impossible. Like, it's like telling a person, don't eat for 2 months. Don't worry, you won't die. You can survive for 3 months. Dude will be sneaking sandwiches under the bar, easy enough. So I'd argue it's a technological problem. But at the same time, because guys have to go and get laid. You can't just sit there and have chicks like, I'll take that dick.
Fall
Sounds
from
good.
the sky.
Girls do that. They just have to say no. They got veto authority on sex. Guys have to actually go out and get it. So it's a skill and it has to be fostered. Take that generation that was raised in the factory time where you just held it in your pants till after high school and then you're good once you get a job at the mill. Mill's in China. So that's done. So they're the ones that are advising these new guys who have to wait 10 years on how to be a good guy and just wait till after high school. So now what you got is a girl that's been hit on constantly since she was 13. She's probably got thousands of field reports of experience, although she doesn't frame it that way. And then you got this guy that's essentially been hobbled. He's 7 years behind. He's sexually retarded. And I mean that like in the medical term, not in the like demonetize this from YouTube term.
Too late.
Yeah, but you see, that's the problem there, because now you've got two people. One has been essentially hobbled. The other person's not. That second person not only has more experience, more skills, but is given much better forgiveness.
Yeah.
But none of this has to do with the failing of people. It's strictly technological. And then I would argue, if you want the church to be relevant in the modern day, it has to stop thinking of itself as an agrarian organization. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But they won't, because change is hard. By the way, my girl just made me bacon, and you don't mind if I eat it on stream?
Rock on, man.
Oh, man.
We're not Jewish.
Yeah. We talked about this before in another broadcast as well. That's going to be my catchphrase for the day. But
I'm Jewish.
Really? I thought you were a rabbi.
yeah. Pretty sure someone asked if you were a rabbi.
So
But
Brian was our first rabbi. Yeah.
I think you agree that there needs to be some kind of wiggle room, or at least some kind of open discussion, because like we talked about before, if we're going fully off of Bible rules for relationships, then people are, sleeping together and getting married at 13. You know what I mean? Yeah. So what are we following the Bible rule, or are we following the law of the land? And you know what I mean? There's so many rules. There's so many ways you're going to jail if you follow the Bible as it is, right? So I think there needs to be an open discussion. You can't expect everybody to wait that long. So
I wouldn't even say a discussion, because talk is cheap. I would say like actual decisions need to be made.
I mean, even when you look at it biblically, like there were plenty of loopholes, so to speak, at the time that could be explored, because I think, Conk, you brought up once about how the origins of the word fornication was just pretty much relating to prostitutes. Like if you paid for a prostitute, pretty much fine. And the biblical definition of, at the time was just you paid for a wife. You paid the father and you got the wedding and then you were done with. So there's a lot of ways that men, first they were younger, but also there are other ways that could still have their needs met before marriage was even a thing.
You guys know how Muslim brothels worked? The one where they would like marry you for like an hour?
An hour.
And then they would annul it or something like that. I was like, that is clever.
We had Abu American on last week. We should have asked him about that.
I think Britney Spears did something like that with like some guy she slept with. She married him for like a day or some nonsense.
Oh, good old Kevin Federline. I don't even know why I know that. I don't know why I know that. I just do.
Yeah. And it's because we at one point the act of sex was the marriage, and now we've added all these other layers onto it, and there's all this complexity that was never there in the original kind of understanding of the church. So yeah, we've complicated something that's it's very simple. But I completely agree. In terms of the technology hasn't helped, the birth control hasn't helped, swiping culture, the hyperbole.
I would argue
steroids.
Showing up to church doesn't even help.
Yeah, I'll
why
give
would
you
they
that
change
too.
if you're still showing up and paying your tithe? Well, things are going along as normal.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. If you're going there for those purposes, I think you're going in the wrong place. So
Yeah, like how bad do you want this change? Are you willing to do it enough to start breaking sin and having premarital sex, learning game? Or do,
that's
do you
pretty much
want
why
the
I'm
church
out
to
the
change
church.
it back? Yeah, that's what I mean. But you ask these kind of guys who are like, the church says no, and I want it to change. Like, if you want it to change, you have to force them to change.
You have
You're
to
not
be
going
the
to change
change.
because you want them to.
Yeah. And not everybody has the ability to stand up against their congregation. And I mean, I know you don't know much of my story, but I helped build a church back in my home country.
Cool.
And eventually they turned on me when I came up with a different interpretation. And it was vicious, right? It was an absolute, bloodbath at the end of the day. But I took that stand. I took the stand like, no, this is what's working for me. What you've been giving me hasn't worked. I'm willing to lose it all my friends in the building or whatever. I'm going to go my own way.
Yeah, how bad do you want it?
Yeah, and not just to be honest, a lot of people are not willing to do that. As I've seen too many people go from a one sermon, they go home and the church fixes them and go back to what doesn't work.
So is that like the minister
Burrito
going their
principle.
own way? Ministers going their own way, MGTOW?
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
To be fair, you're the first guy who actually went his own way that said he was going his own way, as opposed to like a thinly veiled coping strategy against sexual inadequacy. So kudos to you, the first real MGTOW.
We're
yeah,
gonna
and
have a
that's-
declaration
you know what?
ceremony after
And
this.
this is why, speaking of MGTOW, this is why I love. I'm sure you guys have seen that hypergamy photo that everybody shows, where it's like 10 guys, 10 girls, and then the lines over who's going after who.
Yeah.
And they show like 10 of the girls going after 2 of the guys, and like, this is why you can't try. But your church example kind of reminded me, it's like, I don't think hypergamy is a straitjacket. I honestly think it's a feature, not a bug. Like, you're talking about this, but you just explained to me right there, those 8 out of 10 people were unwilling to even enter the game.
Correct.
So by trying, just by putting, I want this more than whatever consequences may come from wanting it. Putting that as your thing, I would argue, puts you well on your way to get to that top 20%. So all these guys complaining that they'll never be Giga Chad, what they really need to think of is like, as soon as I start trying, people are just going to get out of my way. And I've seen nothing but examples of that. So I wholeheartedly believe the Pareto principle isn't
80%
deterministic.
people.
Yeah, 80%
Spot
losers.
on.
80%.
Spot on.
And I'd argue now, the way we're going now, it's now 90% losers. Guys like me, I'm average across the board in just about every metric. The fact that I can carve out a decent level of success is unheard of. Like, I got people that do live streams just wondering if I'm homosexual or not. Like, that kind of attention does not belong to like a 5'9", 5'10" guy. It just doesn't. Don't ask me how I know.
Well, we're in the home stretch, huh, guys?
Are we taking questions from the audience? We got like what, 3 minutes?
None from Marty
Yeah.
though. I wouldn't trust that guy.
Who's that there?
Are we bringing
Yeah, we can
someone
throw
in?
it into the audience. But
Yeah, we'll
I think
take like
I
one
think
or
a
two.
common theme though. Is what I'm seeing through all this is we all kind of got our pulse on what's wrong right now. You know what I mean? That I think the church in general and Christianity and even how it's perceived from the outside and from the inside, like, how to put this? It's definitely changing over time, and it's kind of bending its will to culture, if that makes sense.
Makes sense.
I think the church is no longer its own frame, right? It's kind of just going to whatever's cool. Because, Bobby was earlier talking about like the fight between trying to or not trying to, get women in the priesthood and things like that. But I mean, the Protestant side, especially in modern American Christianity, like, they bent that knee pretty damn fast, So I think it's interesting. But looking back, like, and Ryan, you were talking about this with Martin Luther and all that, that actually a lot of the stuff they're talking about isn't even in the Bible they say they're reading, right? There's nowhere in the Bible you're going to get one-itis or simping. It's not in there. It says you should actually hate all that and relevant to your own frame. You know what I mean? That you should love God, and your purpose and your mission should look like hate when it comes to your family, right? And that extreme difference. And, Rollo talks this a lot in his Religion and Red Pill. He talks about that there's verses in the Bible where it says you're not married in heaven. It's an earthly thing, right?
Right.
It's just what you do on Earth if you want to. It has nothing to do with heaven or your eternal or your mission or things like that.
Right.
It's just kind
But
of
then
like
you
a
ask the
side item
Mormons,
if you
they're
want.
like, no, they'll give you a planet when you're done.
And
so don't
so
worry about
I think
Oh boy. Get your magical underwear.
Ooh. God, I'm probably
But
gonna get
marriage-
Uranus. This sucks. I got bad luck.
But marriage is the. I mean, I believe that
Yeah.
marriage.
Oh,
Is the vehicle
we got
that- I was going to say before Heather comes on that marriage
Go
is
for
the
it, Bobby.
vehicle that God set up to populate heaven, like ideally, because it's through marriage that humans are
Mhm.
made. I mean, because children need a mother and a father that are tied to each other.
Wait, and is this the Heather? Are you the one that just made bacon bits for salad?
Yeah, I'm
Nice.
a fan of your show.
Yeah.
I've
This is
been in your
Heather the
chat.
robot.
Time.
She keeps trying to convince us she's not a robot, but
How do you
This
do the
is why
bacon
I'm
bits?
here. Well, I watched a YouTube video, and you just make bacon regularly, and then you drain it and pat it dry with paper towels and stuff. But I watched this
crispy.
old video from 4 years ago. Well, I was trying to get it crispier this time because I made it a few weeks back, and it got really good. But I was like, oh, I want it a little crispier, and it just, I got it a little too dark on one side, but it still tastes good. But
As long as you
has,
keep
like,
it dry,
more-
it'll crumble up pretty good, though.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. But I enjoy your cooking videos and stuff, and I've been watching you for a while, but I've been in your chat before. I'm married, and I said that I use listening to your program as a way to keep myself in check a little bit.
Oh, I
to,
think I remember that actually.
help out with things. Yeah, so I just once again came on to prove not bought. Thank you. The show's very interesting.
Yeah, no worries. Just keep going on as you
So
keep going
I'm
on.
gonna exit out.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I'm red pill.
All
I'm
right,
supposed to hate
thanks,
women.
guys. Have a great day.
Thanks for
Yeah,
joining us,
later,
Heather.
Heather.
thanks, Heather.
That's neat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
see
because
ya.
I live with the vegans, so I don't really make bacon bits. But it makes sense then, as long as you just keep it dry and keep the oil off of it, and then let it sit out, it would probably crumble pretty well.
Fantastic. Do we have anybody else in the lineup, or are we bringing it in for a landing? Because
I think we can bring it in for a landing.
Yeah.
Do a roundtable wrap up.
All right, Corey, you first. Or have we
Whenever
lost
he
Corey?
reconnects. No, he there we are.
I'm in the top corner. I make the rules here. I'm in the... Am I live?
Yes,
you're
you
back.
are.
You're back.
Yes.
We missed
We've
you.
been live this whole time.
Oh, all right. All right. I'm declaring my executive authority as top left corner. That Brooke goes first.
Oh, I go for it. Fabulous
Oh,
discussion.
wait. We got a dude. Hold on. We do have a dude. I do kind of want to.
What's
I'm
happening,
curious.
man?
What's going on, man?
What's up, y'all?
How you doing?
That is a great mustache.
What's up? You got a question? You got a comment?
Actually,
A
yeah,
concern?
I want to say a shout out. Can you guys hear me well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're good.
Sweet. Host of Fat Emiliano. But I think Ryan knows.
Yeah.
No, you're good. Go ahead,
I
man.
know,
good,
I know
go
what.
Yeah.
All right. Some
Sun's wigging out, maybe.
We can hear you, man. You go ahead.
all right.
Just keep going, man. Talk.
All right. Sorry. Something was wrong with my computer just now. Are we good now?
Yeah,
We're
you're
good.
good.
Sweet. I just want to say, host of Fat Emiliano, but Ryan knows me as the Texican. Remember that, Ryan?
Oh yeah! Finally, to put a name and a face together like that.
That's me, gentlemen. Now I just talking about listening to you guys about the whole red pill through the church. Talking about Batman origin stories. I'm not gonna go through all the details. The church is basically where I got it. I went through all the Conk. I grew up AG, and after even went to seminary and did mission work for about 5 years. Came back and plugged in, did all the right stuff, and at just one point, I was not happy, and I couldn't figure out why. 1 year I did Mexico, and probably someone who's watching this who knows me is gonna call me out, but I tell everyone jokingly that the year that I did that I worked in Mexico, my blood type became tequila because I needed to cope somehow. And I just couldn't figure out what was going on. I'm doing all the right things, But somehow, just trying to change my life, I found Rich Cooper, Entrepreneur in Cars, trying to up my game, and through him, I found Rational Mail, and then watching their stuff, I found Ryan, and I love Ryan's story. I got your book. I'm on chapter 10 right now, Ryan.
Nice.
And,
Dude, I can't believe any good Christian person's reading that thing. I'm not gonna lie.
well, okay, back up. I'm a pastor's son. There you go.
PK.
Yeah. So my dad's Assembly of God. My mom was a Baptist preacher's daughter, and then he taught her how to kiss in tongues, and the rest is history.
Fair enough.
Good man. Good man.
But this year, I just started seeking truth and started reading everything. And said, "Oh God, I need to learn whatever, because obviously what's happening right now is not working, and it's been a slowly changing, slowly growing, reprogramming. I don't want to say truths, but reprogramming what I was taught as truths, teachings.
Yeah.
And finally realizing, what do I believe? And simplifying that in my faith, my walk. And of course, now when I see everything through the red pill lens, I'm just growing, making a lot of drastic changes. Well, subtle changes. But I appreciate you guys. This is the first time I actually got to live stream you guys. Unfortunately, it's the same time that MLD did his Red Pill Church. I'm not sure if you guys saw that. It's awesome. And he's throwing scripture in there that it's perfect. But I just want to say thank you. Shout out to all you guys. My goal is to make it to Vegas. So if I see you guys, I definitely would love to just crack a beer, do some coffee, or shake y'all's hands and share you more of my stories. But much love, many blessings, guys. Keep it up.
Yeah, we'll see you in Vegas, man. I'll be there.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Yep. Peace. All right.
Good dude.
Yeah. Well, we have Jack that wants to be in our finale.
Oh,
Hey, Jack.
Yeah,
What's happening,
Jack,
man?
go ahead. Let us know you are. Pitch your stuff because we're about to land.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just came in? Oh, shame.
Yeah. We got some 11 o'clock time constraints. So,
Aw. Here I was hoping we could bash Ceiling Gang.
oh, yeah.
Aw.
The disrespect is high.
Yeah. But okay, here's a question for you. If God sits on a cloud, does that make him ceiling or floor gang since he's sitting on it?
Yeah.
We talked about this before. God is all around gang. He's
everywhere
He's
gang.
omnipresent
floor.
gang. He's within all gangs.
and the air all in between.
That's a cheat.
That's you throwing out the softballs, Jack.
Hey, bring it up
God
with
is
the
so
Lord,
good.
not
Why
us.
does he let bad things happen?
Why?
Also, why do you hate women, Jack?
Why? Why not?
That's the only right
That's what
answer.
I need to know.
No, I
that.
follow this YouTuber who does cooking videos, and he always told me to hate her just a little bit, and I might exaggerated that a bit.
You rounded up to 100.
Yeah, no, this one goes to 11.
And honestly, that's
nice.
the mild advice. The other one is like, why do you hate women's? Like, do I have to like all of them? Like even Casey Anthony? And then you're like, well,
Babysitter Hitler. Yeah.
do I have to like Hitler's mom? Was she cool?
I don't know. She probably could paint too. It's genetic. So.
Right out the gate, straight with the Hitler argument. God damn it, man.
Hey, this is a Christian channel. We only believe in extremes and ideologies, okay?
Yeah, okay.
Is that extreme Godwin's law? I mean,
How do you apply Occam's razor then?
with a little shaving gel first. It helps moves the bumps. But
No, I
All
saw
right.
the link. I just wanted to hop on real quick and say you guys are doing a great job.
Oh,
thank
dude,
you,
Jack,
man.
you're one to talk.
at least 2/3 of us, you guys can decide who. So
awesome, man. Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
No problem. Just a quickie. I'll see you guys soon.
Yeah, we'll see you, Jack.
I like Jack.
Yep.
He's good people.
yeah.
That is the best part of the show.
Alrighty. Well, that was Religion Zero. Now we're officially ending it for the third time. I hope you all had fun. My name's
Are we doing like
Conk.
quick recaps on just like anybody, how to reach everybody?
Yeah, and I haven't set up
Uh-oh.
Oh, have we
the
lost him?
descriptions yet, but there'll be some. You lost me?
He's gonna put the stuff, all of our links and stuff in the description below.
Yeah. Well, throw out Ryan's book and ways to contact him as well. So check the bottom if you're watching the replay. Blessed. Anyone else got any things to announce? I know there's a podcast happening on another channel in about 20 minutes.
Oh yeah. I mean, so just for everyone that doesn't know, so Brooke and I do our show, the 10K Run podcast. We're doing that in 20 minutes. We do that pretty much right after this now. So it's double header. So
2 a days.
Exactly, 2 days on Sundays. But that's all that's going on, of course. Check us out over there, and then all our links are below, of course, too. So, Bobby, what do you got going on?
Yeah, man, just loving life here in Thailand, and it's really all I got going on. Got some remote work projects I'm doing back at home. Thank God for computers and stuff like Go to My PC, and just watching the world burn from 8,000 miles away.
Oh boy.
Oh, by the way, I'm in a Grab today on the way back from church, and Grab is the Uber of Thailand. They call it Grab. And the guy says, "Oh, I feel so bad for George Floyd." Like even over here, like, but they're not like protesting or anything. That like Thai people don't really care about anything, really. But
so they don't love you. That's sad.
Well, that's about it, really. Yeah. Whose channel are we on next week, by the way?
Who is it?
Mine, I think.
Yeah, I think Brooks
Okay.
after
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Go ahead, Brooke.
Yeah, really quick. 10K Run podcast coming up in about 20 minutes. We'll also be live streaming on the Facebook links. We'll have some watch parties. Please, consider joining along with us and hearing all our interesting conversations. And just Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time, man. Been a big fan.
Fun.
It's been
Anytime.
absolutely great having you on. I just wanted to express that personally. And these great guys that we're dealing with here, I look forward to seeing all of you next week.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Yeah, it'd be fun. By the way, I really want to make a Futurama joke right now. I've been wanting to do it for 1 hour and 40, and I haven't. I'm just saying. Like, are you the voice?
Stick around, Ryan. 'Cause I got a joke that'll have you on the floor, but we got to say it off camera, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, hard R. I get you.
Yeah. Yeah. I just threw Ryan's book
Yeah, Ryan's book is in the chat.
in the chat.
I guess for guys, if you don't
It's a good
know
one.
what it is, it's I liked the idea of Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. I didn't like it was very naive and kind of wishy-washy. I liked the book Bukowski's Women. I liked how like a masculine thing that have like a creative outlet. I didn't like how it was kind of from the 60s and wasn't really relevant now. And then I like Neil Strauss's The Game, but it was just a look at me tale and it wasn't anything. So I kind of combined the three ideas. The idea was 15 encounters from me when I was doing pickup as a way to actually get a dating life, because the sailing life I had was like taking my military life took all my time. So it was either that or become MGTOW. And then I thought I learned something from every one of these girls. And I thought, well, I'll just impart what I learned. And then that process of self-actualization throughout like 10 years of horn and heathen, animalistic, whatever you guys want. I don't know how Roosh describes this stuff. He says fornication a lot. That's all I know. And that's just it there. It's the only book I can think, like one of the few books in the Manosphere that isn't a book telling you how awesome the author is. So at the very least, there's that.
What was it that Roosh said? You're gay if you like butts.
Oh, he said you're gay if you like everything. I think it was what he called like sex, like a gateway to gay.
Yeah.
I don't even understand it. His whole thing was always, he's got a big anti-gay problem. Even when he was still doing day bang and stuff, he tried to make neo-masculinity, which was just red pill, but the gays aren't allowed in. It was so weird.
Yeah, and also don't forget the Jews ruined everything, right?
Oh yeah.
He's projecting more than IMAX. So,
all righty. Well, we'll call that a night. All right.